Welcome back, everybody. We are gonna start getting all this set up. So we're gonna cut up this 03 Sporty. I didn't make much of this video for the beginning because honestly, who wants to watch me tear one of these things apart? You guys see me do that 20 times now. It's all blown apart. We have the original frame right here. This is a Throttle Addiction hardtail kit. And I have somewhere over here, here's the entire manual for it. So we're gonna be using this. I've already measured all these, so 16 inches back from the neck. We're gonna cut right here. And then you flip over to the other page and measure the bottom portion of the hardtail. So I measured down here from this motor mount to where the frame tube stops on the hardtail and marked it on that frame. So once I get all this, I'm gonna double check all the measurements. And I've already wrapped tape around it. You could use a piece of cardstock or something just to get you a nice line. I just run a piece of tape around, and I use real high vis tape because I mean, you can tell I like bright colors. So I run this all the way around, and I'm just gonna cut just to the other side of this. I'm gonna give myself maybe an extra, like, you know, take up blade width and all that sort of stuff. I wanna make sure that I'm not cutting too much. You usually need a gap, right? Like I'm gonna end up with a gap here of at least about a welding rod or so, and I'm gonna take all this in. Once we get all this cut, then we're gonna drill 2 3/8 holes for rosette welds. They've already done it on the hardtail frame over here. We're gonna do the exact same thing to the actual frame, so we can basically plug weld, make sure all this is good, and then weld it up the whole rest of the way around. We are gonna use the motor as the jig for this. So once you get all this installed, everything is cut, clean it all up, get all your gaps. This is actually pretty good, and they have a YouTube video on it. So if you want to watch a video, this is better than mine. Watch theirs. Then we're gonna use the motor as a jig, install it, check it with some straight edges, make sure everything is nice, true, and how it's supposed to, and then weld up as much as you can with the motor in, pull the motor back out, and then finish weld all of it up. Everything's cut up. Went back over, took all the mill scale and everything off of the hardtail portions. Went through, took all the paint, cleaned everything up here. We're gonna spray it all down with some brake clean. Already went ahead and drilled all the holes for the plug welds on all the frame tubes. So we'll clean everything up, make sure it's all nice and clean. I'll go wash my hands because I'm covered in grease and everything else. We'll slide these two frames together. Got the hardtail in, we got all this together. Now we need to get this motor, I've got it sitting under here. We get that thrown back in the frame. Once we get that in and tightened and everything cinched together with the motor mounts, that should like draw this the rest of the way in that we need. And then we'll take a straight edge and put it across the top up here and make sure that from, you know, this is flat, both sides are flat, everything's aligned, nice and true. And then we're gonna start welding. In the frame, used it to align everything. So you can see the gaps up here. They put a spot weld in so you get a gap in all these places. You can check it with a straight edge, just set it right on top of the backbone, and you can see through there. That looks good. This is gonna be fine. Went ahead, welded it all up. So I welded as much as I could with it, with the motor still in the frame, and then I took it apart, welded up the rest of it, finished out all the tubes, put in all the plug welds. We're good. So hardtail and all that is complete. It is down on the ground for the first time in all of its hardtail chopper glory. So I kind of like the way the exhausts are looking. I think honestly, with the way this thing's sitting, we throw some fishtails or something on there, cut them up a little bit, make it look kind of weird to really set this thing off. So as far as fitment, everything went together perfect. Pay no attention to the bungee cord holding up the rear fender for right now. I haven't drilled and put the bungs in because I want to make sure he's happy with how much stick out and everything we have back here. And you know, it's how we have everything arranged. Obviously the tank is still the zip tied on, but I think it's probably in about the right spot if I was guessing, for, you know, being up the backbone and everything else. This frame's done, added an exhaust mount, and went through and put the motor mount on and cleaned up everything up here on the neck. So all this now looks nice and presentable, smooth. Just got the frame back from getting sandblasted, and now it's primed. We still got to go over it, wet sand it, do some other things to make everything smooth and nice. Then we'll paint it how we're actually gonna do it. It is gonna stay black, so it's good that we went with the black primer on it. I got a lot of questions, comments, wanting like a list of the parts, some of the stuff we're doing, where we got all the stuff for the bike. So initially, the biggest thing, so Throttle Addiction hardtail kit. Went in really easy. I tried to film some of it. I'll see how much I got in the video out of all of it, but Throttle Addiction hardtail kit. He bought the complete kit, seat, fenders, all the stuff, sissy bar, everything. And then we have a low tunnel tank that we're also gonna put on it. The tank and the tins and everything are all at paint right now, so those are getting done. With the frame, we also did the country bar kit. So we welded in gussets, smoothed all that out, and then took out the big gusset that goes over both the tubes and everything up under there. I think that really kind of sets the bike off, gives it a much better look than the factory style setup in the front. So super happy with how that came out. We just need to sand it down, smooth it. We might put a little bit of filler in some of the spots just to make it a little bit smoother. And then we'll get all that painted up. But overall, the frame is pretty much done. There's a little bit of work left on it. So some of these other parts that are down here, this is where it kind of gets into your own personal sort of thing. A throttle addiction kit gives you the hardtail, the rear fender, the sissy bar, the seat, the oil bag, and the associated brackets and stuff. Like you have a bracket to run your stock caliper directly on the hardtail kit. You don't have to mess with that. And you reuse your existing chain adjusters. So you'll take those, cut the ends off basically, and then smooth them out, and then you use that with a basic big twin style rigid setup to adjust your rear wheel. So all that is relatively simple. Now bars, 100 different options there. Obviously, right, he went with some nice narrow rabbit ears, which kind of go with a narrow feel with this bike, so that makes sense. And then there's a few other things that you need to think about. So your stock ignition, I think I have it over here in a tote anyway. Let's see, he's gonna have this big old freaking box and some other random things and all that sort of stuff that you won't have any room to put on this chopper frame now. So we went with an Ultima kit. So this is gonna get us, the entire setup is just inside the nose cone of the motor, and there won't be any other boxes that we have to hide. It's just that and a coil. And he bought a separate coil mount, and we'll talk about that later when we put it together. Now with the oil bag, you can run an anti-gravity battery, so that's what we went with. The stock brake master cylinder, you can reuse, however your line is gonna look like trash, so we ordered a new one. That's all just kind of thrown together right now, but we're gonna run a braided line from the master cylinder up and around to the caliper. The rest of this stuff down here is, these are all niceties, right? That's what I would say. I guess the chain conversion, you want to do the chain conversion, you need to do that. But a lot of this other stuff, so like the prism supply things, you have a lot of options on this. He wanted to go with the box tail light. So we're doing that. He's running a Super E, so we're gonna do the Bristol breather. If you're gonna do a different breather setup, obviously, then you're gonna need breather bolts. So he bought that whole kit, and you will need, it does not come with fittings for your oil bag. So you will need to buy, you know, some sort of fittings for like the vent and both feed and return to go into your oil bag once we get all that back from paint. Another thing that's gonna make this so much better on my end, at least for assembling, is he went with the whole stripped down throttle addiction wiring kit, which basically gives you everything you need, and it's all cloth covered wires, looks pretty nice to run your basic setup, right? So lights, ignition, all that sort of stuff on the bike. The motor, we still just have it sitting over here, so basic 1200, we haven't really done anything to it. I've got to take, we're gonna go into the cam chest here and mess around, cut some of this down, make all this look a little bit nicer, and take all this black like bed liner or something. They try to make it look like crinkle coat. I'll take all that off, smooth all this down, probably just leave it like a brushed aluminum finish, and then we're gonna do the same thing with the other side as well, because that all kind of looks, you know, kind of trashy right now, so we'll work on that. It does have the Prism Supply foot clutch and jockey shift setup on it, pretty sweet. So that's basically where we're at right now. Once I actually start putting everything together, it'll probably start next week. I have some mock-up shorts and everything on this that you guys can look at for how it ended up looking right before we tore it all down. But the tins are gonna be at paint for probably another week, maybe. So we'll get the frame cleaned up, done how we want, painted, and then we'll start messing with getting the motor and everything else into it and aligned is my current goal for the upcoming little bit. And then we'll move on from there.